Angus here from House Angus Comics, and a big welcome back to the channel, guys. Remember, loose talk costs lives, and we've got to beware fifth columnists. So today, it is Blitzkrieg, episode 32, Willemsdorf, part 1. But first, let's go to the news, and let's see what's happening in Holland. Well, obviously we've got the sentries still in the water, so to speak, and they can see above them a huge number of parachutes descending all over the place down this corridor. The Dutch are trying to respond to this, and this map's quite interesting, showing the initial deployment of Dutch formations. They are expecting, I suppose, armour to come, and so it's very much built along the lines that we've talked about in these episodes. Queen Wilhelmina, who was much beloved, how we see the coinage change with her with a helmet, and we've also got a change in her parliament and her prime minister, because Geer is ultimately replaced by Gerbrandy, who does a great job following exile. But a brilliant video is the Battle of the Netherlands, and I do recommend, guys, that you watch this one afternoon when painting. And here are the attack vectors. There's that parachute and air landing corridor, and we can see the approach by the German forces. This is very similar to Market Garden, with the 9th Panzer chasing up to relieve these bridges which the paratroopers are being dropped onto. Key targets. It's the first time anything like this has been attempted, and we have casualties, especially from the air landing operations, but a lot of aircraft are shot down. But the Fallschirmjäger are doing really well on the ground. They have the weakness of containers, and also to supply them they need redrops. So today let's look at the Dutch forces and what they've got. Well, these are elements of the 6th Border Battalion, rated confident, trained in green. We've got about 4 to 5 platoons, including a police unit and some engineers, and heavy machine guns, 2 platoons of those. We also have off-table air, anti-aircraft, I should say, and off-table artillery, which is coming from the islands and from Dordrecht. But that will depend on a telephone, and we'll see that later. Here we can also see some of the police unit basically waiting. But the German forces today, and the protagonists of this attack really, are of course 4th, 5th and 6th companies from the 1st Battalion Fallschirmjäger, rated fearless veteran. They are in fact very skilled, highly trained, with excellent weapons, and they are mainly rifle MG, similar to the Dutch. But they will also, and we will only be doing one drop, and that will be the support company that comes in with the mortars and the machine guns, some anti-aircraft guns to defend the bridge, and 2 packs as well. There may also be 5th columnists, and this is a problem in Holland. But let's look at the rules and what are we trying to do. Well, today is a bit of an exploratory one as we move away from I go, you go. We are also trying to develop this for solo play. So we've got 2 decks in operation. The battle deck with all the fog of war in it, as I've stipulated in the past. But we're also going to use an activation deck. So each platoon, each turn gets a card, and depending on the sequence, they will go and do their moves. Displacement, or the Stormtrooper, is all done in one phase. So let's get into the research and the set today. We've looked at Murdoch, we've done those in the previous episodes, but when a bridge is taken, you take both ends. This is what really is key. The south is Murdoch, the north, which we are looking at today, is Willemsdorf. And here are some of the maps and the details that we've dug up. Of course, we'll use black and white and other sources to try and get a better idea of what we're doing. And we're going to have to modify that battlescape. But look at all the parachutes, effectively to the east here. And so that's what the plan was, to do the landings off table, so to speak. A number of bunkers have been identified as well, including this unusual one. Also some pyramid air raid shelters as well, and we'll see those on the table. And some shots here of the landscape. Now, following all the readings and everything that Campaign Sam's managed to do, he's produced this great map. Obviously, it's not as accurate as the because it's needed for a war games table. So, you know, it's as best as we could do, and I'm quite pleased with what we've actually developed here. So we've got all the critical detail in and left the air landings off table this time, just to do something a bit different. Here you can see the sort of swampy ground. We've got Willemsdorf, and the barracks, that's that sort of factory looking building, is critical. You can see the railway embankment there. It wasn't steep. Here's the pyramid shelter as well, and the little port facility with the municipal buildings, which has also got some historic cannon there, and of course a washing line. And here's the congregation of buildings that we've got further down from Willemsdorf, and also beyond that to the south is a farm where we'll see an infantry platoon located as well. So let's look at what happened previously at Moerdijk, because we're trying to produce a link game here on both ends of the bridges with the time frames. Again, see the previous episodes and do watch these again, because this all connects. Here we've got the drop from some historical images, and here's our version as those Ju-52s were to come in on Moerdijk. There was a series of very heavy anti-aircraft fire that was taking place, off-table artillery, but the Fallschirmjäger, although they took quite a lot of critical losses, more than historically, they won the farm and then drove in the trenches. And we also had dogfights taking place over the table. And the little Wachship that came in, did a run, but was eventually shot off by Lieutenant Lem, and we'll see him coming along the bridge in this episode. But the Dutch counterattacked, and they counterattacked with a great deal of elan and put a lot of pressure, but the Germans folded back really defensively, really well. There was some action from a ambush platoon of engineers in the village, but ultimately the Dutch really got shot to pieces trying to get back in to Moerdijk. And it was really not their day. But I mean, the Fallschirmjägers did very well given the casualties they'd taken, but they successfully hold that south end of the bridge. So today, let's get into the battle action and see what's happening. Well, first of all, here is that bunker. It's got a police platoon around it. They are actually classed veteran. They were really good troops, were to be decorated historically. And you can see the barracks there with 2 platoons. And we've also got, you know, around this a couple of machine gun platoons, but they're in the woods or in the buildings. Here at the farm, we've also got an infantry platoon, as we have here, but both of these platoons have no ammunition. There's one platoon out on manoeuvre just as this attacks, and here we see the aircraft as they start to come in over this bridge, and the Ju-52s bring a huge amount of amazement as the troops come out of the barracks, but they're not armed yet. And then as they see all these chutes dropping, they can see the canopies and the canisters which contain the rifles and ammunition. This is critical in this phase of the game, guys, because many of the platoons on both sides don't have ammunition. And then we start to see the first waves of air attacks, the supporting 109s, which come in and strafe, and they do really quite well, take out 4 of those police men who are basically guarding the bridge. And then the Heinkels drop their bomb load in, effectively, and kill 4 more around that garrison position, and then they fly off. And we are also left with an unexploded bomb, and that's a reaction test, and 1 platoon goes straight into it. But immediately the Fallschirmjäger through the cards start to get their platoons activated quickly. The Dutch do as well. Here you can see them by the unexploded bomb, but it's not detonated, luckily. The Fallschirmjäger begin to start collecting their canisters, and effectively they get 3 platoons on, but only 1 starts to collect, as you can see here. Now we've also got, which is going on, the company HQ which arrives, and that's going to have to distribute its mortars and anti-tank rifles, and they're moving forward with great elan and doing really quite well, collecting their bullets wherever they can. But the Dutch are also trying to get back to that garrison in Willemsdorf to get ammunition, when the telephone, of course, comes into play, and you can see they're trying to get through and get artillery off table, which they do, but they've got no ammunition. They make a reaction check and pass, and therefore decide to assault, fixing bayonets. Their artillery fails to hit the Fallschirmjäger, who haven't armed on this flank, and they then launch a daring assault in which, surprisingly, even though both sides has to re-roll successful hits, they force off the Fallschirmjäger and drive them off, and are in a great position if they get the cards in the next phase to assault again and possibly recover the ammunition and containers. But ultimately, although they win, they don't get that opportunity, as we'll see coming up, as the radio and the telephone is ringing, and they've got no choice again when the card sequences start to develop to try and push out and assault again. But this time the enemy is armed. And what we see here is the other platoon in that series of buildings racing now to join this platoon, which is going for the ammunition. And as that assault occurs outside of the farm, they are effectively shot off and repelled, including their command team, who's killed by the telephone. And they ultimately fail a reaction test, which was compelled on them because they had no leader and no ammunition. And of course, rightly so, surrounded on both sides, they surrender. But the Dutch basically have managed to arm 3 platoons. One by the garrison, one which is outside it, and the heavy machine gun platoon, which is rather critical. So this places them in a very good position. But also the Fallschirmjäger are moving with great elan and have got up to that embankment, bulletproof cover there, and are moving everything towards that. They're going to make an assault because they've got to effectively take that bridge and also knock out that little series of buildings as well. So they've sealed the whole area. Here we can see the Dutch from those buildings moving down towards Willemsdorf. We can see the prisoners of war being walked off, and they are going to basically be put into barns as the second platoon, which has overrun the position, moves forward now. But the telephone has been left. That will be secured, and we can see here obviously the Dutch preparing their defence, and they're trying to fall back into cover, because as those Fallschirmjäger get to that embankment, they are going to be really difficult to pick off in bulletproof cover. All the bunkers are facing the wrong way because they're expecting an infantry assault, if anything, across the bridge, and the Dutch basically have now got to run pell-mell down here to get to a position of safety, but they're going to be hit in the flank by a small arms fire if they're not careful. It's a very precarious position. The police haven't moved because they're still expecting an attack. None of the heavy machine guns can be displaced or moved from their bunkers. So it's very finely tuned, so to be continued, guys. So what can we say in postscript? Well, actually, the card system worked remarkably well, and the system is really beginning to build. We've got a lot of action. Lieutenant Lem coming to the bridges. The bridges are going to have to be secured at both ends for an overall victory here. But the Fallschirmjäger are doing really well. They are fearless veterans. They are difficult to defeat. And when you see them in operations like this, you really get an understanding of how powerful a new tool this was. Obviously, these bridges are going to have to be relieved, and that's rather critical. But the Fallschirmjäger are really to go into myth here and legend. Given their, their capabilities and their training, they did really well. And ultimately, although not as many casualties as we might get in wargaming are felt, it's a remarkably interesting action. But also, I'd like to give a megaton thanks to the small guys in wargaming who've made and helped us to, build this. I mean, we've got the grand architect Paul Deming and our all-round good egg Craig at Gaming Models, who've sent us stuff and really tried to help. And of course, big hugs to Craig, I should say, Rude Boy Craig, and of course for that wonderful bar he's built to add on to it. So, and Fearless Phil, of course, but who fights a one-man crusade against Germany as the Russians. But I would like to also say, what are you waiting for? Do get in touch with us if you want us to help or discuss any of the ideas we're making. And this is, guys, Blitzkrieg, and thank you so much for your support so far. So, until next time, stay lucky, stay safe, best wishes.